If you haven't heard of Rob, aka the Duke, you must be living under a rock. And if you don't follow him on LinkedIn, go do that right now because he posts some of the best content that I've seen in the ServiceNow industry. Love a good meme, man after my own heart. He's passionate about developing ServiceNow specialists early in their careers, and he even hosts a podcast centered on ServiceNow news and trends, which is also amazing. Check that out as well. Rob, I'm so excited to have you dive into this session today, all around ServiceNow reporting and why being thoughtful with your reporting strategies really matter. So let's get into it, Rob. I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right, I am here to talk about building a reporting program that matters. This is a presentation that I've honed over a couple of years of all the things that I talk about in the ServiceNow space. This is one of my favorites. And so the goal here is to take you from somebody who has a purely reactive stance to reporting to somebody who leads reporting proactively in their organization and thus becomes the linchpin for value. For those that don't know me, my name is Robert Fedoruk. Some people call me the Duke. I have a small little company called Duke Digital Media. I am an independent consultant and consigliere. I do a whole bunch of stuff. And if you want to get in touch with me after this presentation to maybe talk about how we can dive further and get a more proactive reporting program going in your organization, you can email me at rob@theduke.digital. Okay, so before we can start making a program for reporting, we must go to the primal building blocks of why we do anything in ServiceNow. And the very primal, the most, going back a million years of human evolution, the most primal point of why we do anything in ServiceNow or any other process management tool for that matter is that process is not natural. Our inner instincts just balk at it. And to prove this, I want you to put politics aside for maybe a couple seconds, but consider a political protest. Okay? This is a group of people who you would guess, just on the surface, have all the tools to do anything they want. Why? Because they are highly passionate. These people are coming out maybe in the middle of their workday, in some countries, maybe at the risk of their lives, to come out and present for or against something. So they're highly passionate. They will throw down near infinite amount of resources to get what they want. They are also highly ideologically aligned. Almost everybody in this giant group of people are aligned on one thing. So who else would you want to get something done? Highly ideologically aligned, highly passionate people. But let's get to brass tacks here. What is the most complex thing we could ask this group of people to do? Maybe we can get them to walk in the same direction. Maybe for a small point in time, we can get them to chant the same chant. The paradox of this is because they have no process, they cannot get anything of sufficient complexity done. It's like water spilled on the ground. You got plenty of water, it's just on the ground. You can't do anything with it. Not anything complex, but this is humanity in its natural state. Because they don't have the time and energy to wrap a process around what it is they want to do, they cannot do anything complex. And that's the primal That's the primal thing that makes reporting so hard in the real world. Now, let's compare that to a marching band. Okay. Now, a marching band can do amazing things. A marching band can everybody march in time, everybody play the same song, everybody turn on a 90-degree angle when they come to a corner that they got to march around. And you have people who you're not ideologically aligned with blowing an entirely different instrument in your ear. I am a delicate flautist and I have the trombone player just like an inch away from my ear. Yet still, I'm flouting away and we're all playing the same song, and we're doing it perfectly in time. Now, does this happen naturally? Absolutely not. We take a bunch of people who could be on totally opposite ends of political and religious and whatever other um, uh, passionate category that can divide a people. We can have all sorts of them in this single marching band. But via process, via understanding the outcomes that they need, and using the process to refine their performance against that outcomes, that is the only way we get to the amazing marching band experience. Okay, so there's a couple words in there that we should catch. They understood the process, but they not only did they understand the process, they understood the outcomes that they needed for the process to be successful. So it's not enough to know the process. They might know how to set up a training schedule. They might know how to train for their instruments. They might know how to train for marching, but all that means nothing unless they're measuring an outcome and then refining the process to improve the outcome. Okay. So why do we process at all? And we process at all so that we can make improvements to a thing at scale. Okay, we can be all cowboys and whatever, and maybe somebody does absolutely heroic efforts and reduces the number of non-updated incidents in a week. Great, you were the hero, but that does not scale. We can't hire 100 heroes. We can hire 100 we can hire 100 regular people, and maybe one of them is going to be a hero. So we use a process to control for the fact that we have no heroes, and we need to improve stuff at scale. And what do we improve? Speed, quality, safety, uniformity, compliance, customer satisfaction. We can sit here all day and rattle them off. The key is every process has different outcomes, sometimes different outcomes at different times, and we need to get these all pumped up at scale. So you got to know the outcomes of the processes that you're working with. Okay. To help you come to grips with this, I've developed a thought process called the 4 purposes of reporting. There is, when you boil it all down, really only 4 purposes for a report. Okay. And gosh, I still got to rearrange this slide. But first process is to manage work. We got 100 things we have to do. What thing should we do? And the managed work is more in line with, like, gosh, what is the next best thing to do? What is the thing that will deliver the highest value for us in this moment? Who is working on what? It's all the things that we're looking at when we're looking at a dashboard in ServiceNow, where the outcome of the dashboard is some kind of, work logistics. Okay, then there's 2 types of maximum and minimum reports. So there's some reports that are just there to help us maximize good outcomes. What's a good outcome of this process? Are we there yet? What's our goal? How close are we to the goal? Have we exceeded the goal? And this is important because all organizations have limited energy. limited managerial energy. So if you were overperforming on a good outcome, would you still throw managerial resources at it? Or would you back off a bit and say, okay, let's improve something else? Versus the third type of report, minimize bad outcomes. And you just, if any of you have worked, I used to work in this window and door factory. There was a guy there that was working in that factory since before my dad was born, which was awesome. But his workstation was right below a old board that was hand painted somewhere around World War I, and it said days since last accident. That's a minimize bad outcome report, and it's to remind us that these things have to be minimized at all costs. Okay, and the fourth type of report, and I would wager the most common report in the ServiceNow world, you tell me, but I call it a mine insights, and I use the mining metaphor um, um, very seriously. Okay, so because an insight mine report is the same thing as going into a deep dark cave and banging away at a wall you can barely see and hoping to goodness that something shiny falls off of it. I think we've all seen these reports. They're just a dashboard with like 15 different widgets on it. And if you just looked at the widget by yourself, you're like, why am I looking at this? Like, what am I supposed to do when I see this? And that's an insight mine. Under normal circumstances, it doesn't provide value, but you hope if you stare at it long enough, something does come up. Okay, another thing to help you organize these things in your head is that there are 3 reporting personas and only 3 reporting personas. And I think where a lot of programs go wrong is that they fail to realize that there are different reporting personas. How many of you have seen a ServiceNow scope of work where item 7 on the scope was do reporting, big fat air quotes? And they think that if they just come up with 8 reports, then that's going to satisfy. But after you understand the 3 personas, you know that you always have to think about your reports for your processes from 3 different angles. And if you do, you'll have way better results for everybody. The first persona is what I call the operator. The operator gets the stuff done. They haven't got time for trend analysis. They're not pulling apart PA. Probably the most important thing that they have to worry about is what is the next most important thing. Okay. And back when I worked at VividCharts, some of you might not know that I was actually an early adopter and I was an early employee of VividCharts. And so I built this dashboard as an example of what a operator would look at. And you'll see that it's very like, it's not heavily visual because they're not interested in trends. They need a list and maybe a bunch of charts for very important things that they have to drive down to 0. So here's all the stuff in my group. I have this much open that P1. I have this many bouncers. I have this many P1 bouncers. I have this many stale updates, and this many P1 stale updates. Take a wild guess which lists they're going to try and pull down to 0 first. Probably one of these 3 because they're P1s, right? And I'm probably going after P1s with stale updates because those are P1s that have just been left lagging. Okay, so always remember the operator is all about what's the next most important thing to do because the operator is the doer. Okay, but we also have another persona called the analyst, and the analyst job is to determine, are we improving or degrading? Improving or degrading what? Our outcomes, right? So we might have many outcomes necessary for this process, and they're going to find out if we're getting closer or farther away to those outcome targets. To what degree are we improving or degrading? And what should we worry about? Okay, so the analyst is going to use tools like performance analytics or possibly VividCharts to break it down and figure out, how we're performing against the various outcomes. Okay, and the third persona, which I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the third persona is one of the most important, but the least served in our entire ecosystem. The stakeholder makes the decisions based on the analysis, right? All the analysts can do is say we're improving or degrading to this degree. The stakeholder is responsible for redirecting resources and attention. Okay, so if they say take your managerial energy off of this and apply it to this, because that's what my customers are banging down my door with their torches and pitchforks, right? They make the decisions. Also, they have no time to do the analysis. I remember when PA first came out and they're like, finally, the CIO can sit down in front of a dashboard and like play with all the breakdowns and do this and do that with, and like, no CIO in the world is going to sit down and play with a performance analytics dashboard. I'm sorry, they're not. That's what an analyst is going to do. And the CIO is going to make the decisions based off of the analysis that has been provided to them. Okay, oftentimes they're politically separated from the analysis as well. Okay, so when I say they're underserved, there is rarely a aesthetic experience whereby an analyst can say, here's the story for you to make a decision on. And this is where I just love VividCharts, okay? Because it allows me to put something like this that I would be proud to bring to whomever my stakeholder is. And this is a example of a project status report. Some of you have worked with PMOs, I'm sure, and you understand the project status report that's available in ServiceNow out of the box. But has anybody considered that the PMO serves people outside the organization, external stakeholders? Even if they aren't external, isn't it worth it to have a fine aesthetic experience that our stakeholders can wouldn't judge us by? Okay, and so this is an example in VividCharts of a beautiful, fully branded project status report. Super easy to set up too, by the way. I'll stop plugging VividCharts now, but you definitely should look at this, especially if you have a PMO. Okay, so now we've learned about the four types of reporting. We have learned about the three personas of reporting. So we know kind of like what kind of reports we can build and for who. So let's really organize our program so that we always provide the right kind of reports for the right kind of things at the right times. And that's where we come to ceremonies and artifacts. And yes, I shamelessly stole terminology from Agile. A ceremony is a designated time and audience. It uses specific artifacts in support of a purpose or an outcome, if you will, to make a decision. Raise your hand if you've ever felt like all you do in reporting is just satisfy tons and tons and tons of ad hoc report requests where you know they're just going to stare at it and hope they get insights out of it. And that's because nobody has sat with them and talked about the purpose and the decision that you're going to make based off of that artifact. Okay. So again, ceremony, designated time, uses specific artifacts in support of a business decision. An artifact fulfills a purpose to be used in a ceremony. I say artifact, it's like it could be a report, it could be a PA dashboard, it could be some exported to PDF VividCharts piece of master artwork. It could be any of those. So, for your own purposes, and for when you are leading your stakeholders towards this reporting program nirvana, this is a really handy statement that can help you build stories for report building. So, as a persona, how many personas do we have? 3. I go to the ceremony where an artifact helps me understand the report purpose and make the following decisions. Get it all out and onto the page. Not only does this help you, this helps your stakeholders really understand what they're asking for. And it causes them to think deeper about the things that reporting can do. And excuse me, what I got the cups now. Great. Okay, so that's a little statement I use in order to help me build reporting stories with my clients. Okay, so let's kind of summarize this all together. So we have personas, operators, analysts, and stakeholders. They have ceremonies, things like just a routine, like every day at 8, I'm just going to pull up this report. Or something that they take to a like a regular scheduled team meetings, like your PMO always has a status report summary with their stakeholders every week or month or whatever, or something ad hoc. Like maybe I have a group of reports prepared, but like I don't know if it's going to be today or next week or whatever. And you could have some of your own ceremonies in here. This is by no way authoritative. It's just getting you thinking about there's always like a when and always a who. Which artifact, maybe it's an analysis, maybe it's a report, maybe it's a dashboard. The key is it's got to be an artifact. Okay, then we have a report purpose. Are we maximizing good outcomes? Are we minimizing bad outcomes? Are we trying to find, like, manage the next piece of work, or are we just mining for insights? And then finally, a decision. Are we going to adjust resources? Are we going to plan for the future? Are we going to reprioritize stuff? Or are we going to have to communicate with stakeholders who are reliant on this? Not many people like I think of all the things they don't think of, the decision that a report might make is probably the thing they think about the least. Okay, this gets a little bit more kind of in the gears of ServiceNow and less about stakeholders and such. But it really, really pays to understand PA and reporting. And I just realized because of my preview that I've got a whole bunch of slides in here that that have been hidden. So let me just unhide and let me just give me 2 seconds. Okay, I'm going to pause my share. This is super embarrassing.
You're all right. While you're doing that, I just want to remind everybody that we will take questions at the end. I saw somebody, maybe David had his hand raised at one point. Just as you think of them, drop them in that Q&A for us, and we'll get all those lined up for Rob at the very end.
All right, just a quick check to see if I'm sharing again.
We are still on your same.
Oh, I had pause sharing. We can move. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about PA and reporting and how that has anything to do with you forming a program around reporting. And so I want to get to brass tacks about the difference between the two of them, the two different purposes that they serve. So we're talking about a report. We're talking about what does the data look like right now? Because a report is run at Planck length time. As soon as you run it, the next picosecond, the data could have changed. Okay, and that's why it's difficult for a report to view the past. The data may have changed. I can't say how many customers I've been at where they're just like, look, it's really simple. We just want to see what this was like last week, but we don't have PA. Just do it. And I'm like, you don't understand. Reporting is purpose built to do just right now. If you want to know what the data looked like 3 days ago, that's exactly what PA is for. So let's take a look at PA. Here we have like month to month. This is a breakdown, but it's basically showing the change month to month. So a PA indicator, what does the data look like each time we ran it? So if you can think about a report and what you output from a report, imagine just running that report every single day and then saving the results. That's what PA allows you to do. And so it's wow, I got a bit of a typo here, but it's purpose built to compare against the past. Purpose built for that. Okay, so just to review reports, you use them when your focus is right now and when you aren't gauging performance. Okay? Why would I say something like you use reports when you are not gauging performance? Well, because to gauge my performance, I need to gauge it against the past performance. It does me nothing to understand my performance right now unless I'm viewing it through the lens of my past performance. Otherwise, I don't know if I'm improving or degrading. So for PA indicators, you use them when measuring performance. That's the point. When you compare to the past or when you need to break down by certain elements. Okay, that's something else the reports don't do is the breakdowns. So Robert Fedorik's just no nonsense comment on PA or reporting. If you're managing performance, and I would wager that most companies want to, except they probably don't know their outcomes. If you're managing performance on outcomes, performance analytics is non-negotiable. Okay, your only other alternative is to assign somebody to run a report every single day, take that result, copy and paste it into Excel. There's words for that kind of job that probably aren't meant to be said in polite company. Okay, so just a visual, let's do a visual overview about this. Here is where I'm at today. And I can probably get the same results from a report. I just tell me what the results are today. Great. Here's today. Now with PA, just imagine that you ran that same report for 100 days. And therefore it can trace you a line to say, how have the numbers changed? which is great. Um, Now you might be thinking, like, if I just asked you, are we getting better or worse? And the answer is it depends. Are we maximizing good outcomes here, or are we minimizing bad? Because if we're minimizing bad outcomes and the number is increasing, well, this is very bad news. Very, very bad news. Okay. The other thing is we don't know what good actually looks like. And so what PA gives you is this ability to form a goal or a threshold. So you could say stuff like above this certain threshold, it's bad, very bad, big bad. Let's do something about it. Or maybe in this case, if you're trying to improve good outcomes, it's like, yeah, we're improving, but we're not good enough because we haven't reached the goal. Okay, this is like the ultimate performance management tool. Okay, because it contextualizes the direction you want to go with your goals, your thresholds. How far are you towards them? Are you trending in the right direction? Okay. And then the last thing it allows you to do is not predict the future, but forecast the future a little bit based off of its past data. So you can get questions like, how long will it be if nothing else changes? How long will it be until I reach my goal? Or how long will it be until disaster strikes and everybody's fired, especially you? Okay, so that was a bit technical a dive on PA versus reporting, but for you to build an optimal reporting program, you must know the difference. And it'll also pay for you to know the DNA of building a PA report. And the DNA for me for building PA reports is you must have an aggregate to measure. And you have to know the unit of it. Am I measuring in time? Am I measuring in a count of units? Am I measuring it in dollars? I have to have a measure and an aggregate. I need to have a desired direction. Do I want this number to go up or down? I need an interval of measure. Am I measuring it every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year? And most people wouldn't use the word need. I would use the word need, a threshold or a goal, because that can tell me the exact point where I can start reassessing my managerial energy. Remember, managerial energy is limited, so we can pour all of our efforts into, let's say, reducing the resolution time for our P1 incidents. But once it's under the threshold, maybe we have some other big problems to worry about. We can focus our efforts there. Okay. Again, this is all about processes and adjusting processes to improve outcomes for a process. Why? Because we are not a mob, we are a marching band. All right. So, in conclusion, to get your reporting paradigm from fulfill all these ad hoc requests to a mindful, thoughtful, effective reporting program, here's what you have to do. Understand why we spend energy. We spend energy to go from a mob approach to solving a problem to a marching band approach to solving a problem. Understand the why of your process. The processes in a marching band are to increase timing of the marching, to ensure that everybody knows their instruments and the songs and that they can play that all in time. So all of their outcomes are going to be geared towards measuring those things. So you understand the sought after outcomes. You build reports for each of the persona. Cheapers, if you take nothing else away from this presentation, understand the reporting personas. So now you're building reports for everybody involved in the process and not just whoever asked you last. So build reports for each of the personas. Remember, the personas are operator, analyst, and stakeholder. Know the artifacts and the ceremonies that you're dealing with and the report purposes. So you remember this. Go back to that. Remember this line. As a persona, I go to the ceremony where the artifact helps me understand the report purpose so that I can make a decision. Okay, understand that. Okay, and finally, understand reports versus PA indicators. And if you can do all that, my friends, you will be a dragon slayer at your organization. People will naturally seek you out to bring you their problems to put on ServiceNow because they know you will equip them to have all the ammo they need to manage their managerial energy and to make sure that the stakeholders have all the right information such that they can make their proper decisions. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. My name is Robert Fedoruk. Again, if you want to have further conversations about this, you can reach me at rob@theduke.digital. I am a freelance ServiceNow consultant in consigliere. I do this often for many companies, and I can do it for you too.
Thanks, Rob. That was super impactful. Guys, if you've got questions, please drop them in the Q&A section. I had a thought for you, Rob. You might have touched on this a little bit towards the beginning of the presentation, but it's something we think about a lot internally at VividCharts. How important, in your opinion, are aesthetics and report design to a good reporting program? Do they matter?
Absolutely, they matter, especially for your stakeholders. Okay, so if you're a PMO and you're managing like 60 million in project spend, and you're going to copy and paste that project status interface in a ServiceNow, and you want to be a person that asks for 10 more million, who are you kidding? Right? Looks matter. Like we're built that way. Aesthetics make and break immediately. If you put something ugly in front of somebody, they think that you don't think highly enough of them. They don't think it out loud in their brain, in their inner voice, but they know it in their heart. So yes, aesthetics absolutely matter. If you were going to your CIO and you had a case to make about whatever, and let's say you're not pulling stuff out of ServiceNow, you're just like, consider these points of pain, consider these points of resolution. I can solve this to you for $1 million. Guarantee you'd put time and effort into that PowerPoint presentation to make you look like a pro. Except if it's something coming out of ServiceNow, oh, here's a cut and paste of a list view. So yes, aesthetics absolutely matter, which is one of the reasons I love VividCharts. Like, look at that. I mean, but imagine your company logo and whatever. And I also can't stress enough that sometimes this stuff isn't for internal consumption. Like think of CSM implementations. Your customers can be external. And do you want copy paste of, ServiceNow reports that were aesthetically designed like in the 90s? Sorry, does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. And the use cases that always come up for me when we talk about aesthetics are, MSPs and, services partners where their presentation to the outside world is their image, it is their reputation.
Yes.
But I love the way that you framed the internal importance as well, right? Like, do you not take pride in this multi-million-dollar project portfolio? Personally, I think it makes it easier to digest the data in a report when it's well put together and aesthetically pleasing. Not for nothing, it can be distracting, right? When things are just copied and pasted and not formatted well. So yeah, that was great. John's asking if you can re-show the slide that starts with, as a persona, I attend a ceremony. I'm guessing to take a screenshot. Do you want to throw that one up for him? I've got another question here. This is something I think about a lot. How can you build, and this is more philosophical, so don't worry if this is like a sort of more of a rambling answer, but how can you build a reporting program that prevents manipulation of data for a desired outcome? Like, how do you get closer to the core data, the root data, to prevent people presenting what they want you to think? Does that make sense?
It's some flavor of everybody has to know the outcomes. Okay. So if the outcomes are like, we want to like, say we're tracking factory accidents, okay, human injuries in a factory. If everybody knows that's the outcome we want to minimize, and so you build a report publicly that measures only that, right? And so, and everybody knows, if I want to know the injury rate in a week, a quarter, whatever, they can go there to get it. And then that would be like, it's already integrated into ceremonies. And therefore, for somebody to manipulate that, they would be manipulating that in public, right? It's not an authorized artifact. It's, I know that's not a very refined answer, but it's something close to that.
Yeah, and another thing that comes up for me, I think, around this question is when you're utilizing reporting platforms that are in ServiceNow, like the further you get away from ServiceNow with your data, the more chances somebody has to insert kind of their own, what they wanted to say, right? Their own desired outcomes. We talk a lot about, the second you export the data from ServiceNow, it's stale, while you're
Yeah.
also exposing it to other people's abilities to manipulate it, right?
That is a great point. And if you're going to export something from ServiceNow, make it aesthetically pleasing and pretty so you can, when you hand it off to your stakeholders. But also, I think like one of the gists of this whole presentation that I made is that you are building a ServiceNow reporting program. And so that kind of manipulation is only possible when free agents are building their own reports, where their filtering mechanisms and whatever are kind of invisible. Right. And so you would be allowing less free agent reporting, and you would be building the reports more for the stakeholders, like in that process.
We're getting some more questions coming in. Jay says, how important is storytelling along with the data to bring a point home? It's a great question.
That's kind of one of the other reasons I love VividCharts, because I can use this as a backdrop for my story. ServiceNow is just data. It requires human interpretation. Okay, so even when you're doing PA and you can clearly see, well, we were doing fine up until a month ago, and then stuff started to get real bad. We're way past our threshold of pain. Everybody's going to get fired, but tell the story. Okay. And somebody says, no, that was like the incident where somebody messed up an import and a whole bunch of bad data got in. It's a false positive. Everything's going to be fine. ServiceNow can't tell you that. The human has to tell you that. But you can use a beautiful interface, right, that's showing you multiple data points in order for you to have the opportunity to tell the story. But how critical is storytelling? Absolutely freaking critical, because that's how stuff gets done. That's how you build your case. That's how you make the world bend to your will, is that you tell them a story that they resonate with. you get 10 people to look at this and they'll come up with 10 different ideas of what might be going on. But no, 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 you tell them what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. John says, you just hit my frustration with Power BI pulling ServiceNow data and who knows what. I 100% agree with you, John. I used to work at an organization that had so many old Power BI reports. And the second I raised my hand and said, what's the logic behind this chart? Because it's not the data that I show. Well, the person that built it hasn't worked for the company for a year. So who knows? Yet half the sales floor is still using that chart. I laugh, but it wasn't funny then, right? Because I really couldn't tell people this is the logic behind this Power BI report and how somebody built it, because it often was tribal knowledge that left with the person that built it. So again, another example of getting further away from the source of truth, which is ServiceNow.
Because I've come up with that a lot. And the narrative I usually form is like, look, I love Power BI and the people that build with Power BI. But Power BI is something that I would use for my core strategic apps that make me digitally unique.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point. Power BI absolutely has its place, but when you're utilizing a platform as powerful as ServiceNow, where you can, manipulate and create reporting directly in the platform, why would you be pulling it into something else? So I think that's a really good insight. I think that's everything, Rob. How do you want to leave us?
Yeah, again, if you want help setting this up at your own organization, you want to just have talks about reporting, get me at rob@theduke.digital. Follow me on LinkedIn. I also have a podcast called CJ and the Duke. If you go to my LinkedIn profile, you should be able to connect with that. I have a YouTube channel. If you search for Robert Fedoruk, you should come up with the YouTube channel as well. Even if it doesn't result in a consulting opportunity, I would love to talk to you all. Just send me questions to that email address. And thank you again for picking me when you had all those choices. Can't wait to talk to you all.